So, welcome back to potato graphics settings, but more importantly, Third Age Reforged, and to a scenario. Actually, this is one of Horton's scenarios, and this is actually a map that I've seen before, but I can't remember the name because it's been quite a long time since I last saw it. But it is going to be, I believe, a 4v4, which is interesting for a scenario. Usually the defenders are hopelessly outnumbered. We'll see how this goes. I think we're going to see quite a lot of elite forces on the field today. We've got Bobo, 17k, who is playing as Umbar, and he has got some Balagaya halberds here at the front. Obviously it is a snowy locale, so they're covered in snow, which I'm sure the men of Umbar are ill used to. We've got some Balagaya footmen in behind them. I'll be going through the compositions relatively quickly because it is a scenario, and also because it's a long battle at nearly 60,000 frames. Got some Balagaya footmen, Balagaya halberds, some Corsair infantry. I think they do have the armour upgrades, so they're going to be slightly more resilient in an elongated fight. Some Numenorian shield guards, some Naaru sentinels again. They won't have seen snow very often, but one of the best pike units in the game. Some Abrazanim Narduzagar, who do have the armour upgrade. And some Corsair fencers, so a lot of the elites from Umbar here. Some Narduzagar, some Naaru Royal Archers, some Naaru Royal Guard. So again, we've got the Royal Archers, which are essentially just a worse version of the Royal Guard, I believe. Got some Corsair Savages again, they'll be very chilly considering the locale. We've got some Corsair Blackguards, we've got some Castamir's Legion, we've got some Harbingers of Castamir, or Harbingers of Castamir I should say, and we've got some Castamir's Rangers as well. And up here on the sort of natural wall formations we have some Balagaya Archers as well. And that's just about it for Bobo's army, which is all clustered in one spot. But as we move down here, we will start to get into Engsvitz's army, who is playing as Arthedain, so it's going to be the human factions banding together. Some Evendim spearmen, they'll be a little bit more used to the cold. We've got some Arthedain men-at-arms. Do they have the armour upgrades? They do. We've got some Arthedain marksmen as well, and then we've got the first line of defence over here. The Arthedain pikemen, backed up by a couple of units of spears, one being Evendim spearmen and one being Fornoster Rain defenders. Obviously the Arthedain phalanx alive and well. Some Arthedain marksmen, some Arthedain men-at-arms. We've got some civilians, and we've also got some more Arthedain men-at-arms. And then just over here we should probably see the rest of Engsvitz's army. We've got some Arthedain pikemen up here, some dismounted Dunedain knights, and some Fornoster Rain knights, and some Arthedain marksmen. It's not a hugely elite army from Arthedain, it must be said, but still capable of dishing out some damage. And then over here we can see it's a real maze, this map. We've got Heathorn playing as another Arthedain army, with some Arthedain marksmen and a catapult hidden up on this outcrop here, which should be good for when the first layer falls, because this is obviously going to be the second layer of the fort. I think there is another way in, if I'm remembering correctly, sort of over here. Yes, there is. So one of the attackers could take this route if they wanted to, but it might be best for them to just group up and try and destroy the two defenders in the lower, quote-unquote, section of the city. Some dismounted knights of Numenus. I assume Horton's got a more elite Arthedain army. Indeed, we've got some Numenus gate guards here, and some Arthedain pikemen, some dismounted knights of Numenus, Fornoster Rain knights, Fornoster Rain defenders, some Arthedain men-at-arms, and then we get back in some of the infantry, so Arthedain men-at-arms. He's got a trebuchet as well, so two pieces of artillery, and some Dunedain peacekeepers and defenders. He's not the only one back here, though. We also have Brainy Smurf, who is playing as Gondor, and Gondor have got some Karandros Swordmasters. We can of course expect the frame rate to be absolutely dreadful on this map. We got some Axemen of the Sarnak as well with the armour upgrades, Gondor infantry with the armour upgrades, some Citadel Guards, some Pelagian Marines, Ramos Echo Garrison, just a melee variant actually, Veterans of Osgiliath, Gondor Archers, Guards of Osgiliath, Fountain Guard of course, Gondor Spearmen of course, more infantry with the armour upgrades, some spearmen as well, and we've got some Wardens of Minas Ithil, Elisar's Vanguard, Nimlothian Honour Guard, and the Wardens of the White Tower. So all of the Gondorian elites, and then just back here, got a unit of Karandros marksmen hidden away. Now, I'll go through the attackers again as quickly as I can. There will be a cut at the start of this battle as well for when the attackers are simply moving up. We have Lango, who's playing as Angmar, so Angmar Marauders. I'm not zooming in on this because there's really no point. You know, we're trying to get a quick overview of this so we can get into the battle as quickly as we can. Angmar Halberdiers, Marauders, Orc Fellas, Angmar Marauders, more Orc Fellas. We've got some Orc Fellas, Gundabad Guard, Witchround Hammer Guards, so here's the elites, the Blackwatch Legion, some Witchround Pikemen, some Witchround Blackguard, the Trolls, and it is worth saying as well that Guardians of Kharndoom back here as well as Scourge Raiders. The attackers will need elites because they don't have an army advantage here, and they are attacking, so it'll be interesting to see how this works out. The defenders might even have the advantage here for once, depending on well, I'll reserve judgment for that based on how the early game goes. Heavy Goblin Infantry from Froggy over here, playing as the Misty Mountains. He's got some Cave Troll Drummers. Just a little bit over here we can see some Heavy Goblin Archers. Heavy Goblin Spears in force as well. All of these units into loose formation, so presumably the Arthurdane Trebuchet can take pot shots. I've got some Black Uruks back there. Heavy Goblin Crossbows could be very dangerous in the right situation. White Uruk Fearmongers, some Snow Trolls, and then way in the back we've got some Goblin King Bodyguard. So let's move on over to here, and we can see Peak Keep, who is going to be playing as Mordor. He's got some Sauron's Will, some Black Legion, and some Minas Morgul Bodyguard at the back. He's obviously got some trolls of his own, some mountain trolls, a line of Orc archers, and then at the end you can also see he's got some troll drummers. Moran on guard, which aren't anything too special, but again, the numbers that Mordor seem to be bringing will be the important thing here. Lots of Orc maulers, lots of Orc fodder as well, and then some Moran on infantry in there as well. So I would say this is probably the lowest tier of the Orc armies we've seen so far, but numbers can certainly play into things in a big way. And then finally, Eclipse 2500 playing as another Mordor army, got a lot of Moran on infantry as well. There's some Moran on heavy maulers, some important AP, as well as the halberds. We've got some Moran on archers, we've got Troll Catapult, so that's going to be quickly moving around. Yeah, we've got some Black Legion of Barad-dûr, Olag High, Troll Drummers, and then back here I assume we've got Elite, so we've got Minas Morgul Chosen, Temple Executioners, so they have the armour upgrade. Indeed they do. Some Nazgul, some Temple Guard, and some Sauron's Will. So that was a pretty quick overview of all the armies there, trying to get it out of the way as quickly as possible because this is going to be a long one, and also because there's probably going to be a pretty lengthy phase of them moving into position to attack the defenders. So I will rejoin when the battle begins. So Froggy is certainly wasting no time. He's going to be sending up his initial units right away. We can see obviously the Umbar archers, the Abrazani Nadi Barweeb, and the Belagair archers right up on the walls, ready to meet them. Now this is going to be a pretty punishing climb. I would worry a little bit actually. The frame rate is obviously going to be absolutely dreadful in this match if you hadn't noticed already. They are going to be returning fire into the Umbar front lines, although Umbar, as we've seen in the past, can withstand arrow fire reasonably well, but Mountain Uruk archers doing their best to skirmish down that very heavy front line that Bobo has put up. But then that's unsurprising because as soon as Bobo loses this canyon area, his options for defence become a little bit more limited, although it is a fairly long little corridor that he's got, but other than that, he might struggle a little bit. We'll see. Obviously you can see the arrows flying backwards and forwards. Let's get in close while we still can before the melee fight starts up. But yeah, with all of these Belagair footmen and these disposable Corsair infantrymen, I would say they're probably okay with just sitting here and taking it. It will of course take away the initial archer power that the Misty Mountains have, and of course it means that their own archers will not have to take any sort of counter fire. What's going on over here? Abrazani. You can see that Peak Keep seems to be dividing some of his forces, so he's going to send over some support over this way. I would still give the advantage to the defenders on this one. I feel as though the fact that they're not outnumbered by an army and the fact that they've got such a nice defensive position means that they are in a pretty good place, I would say. I mean, we'll see. It's a long battle. Much can happen. Heavy Goblin Infantry, obviously the Heavy Goblin Infantry is very disposable, so they can be sent forward, but they can't be sent forward unthinkingly because obviously if they are, then the Umbar front line will just easily deal with them. It is worth saying, however, that if they can sort of coax out all of this ammunition from stuff like the Castamir's Rangers, just being used on units like this, Froggy will probably be okay with that. He's got a lot of goblins, he's got a lot of support as well from Angmar with their low tier units. Lango going to be moving forward some of his units. Yeah, this is going to be a punishing climb. Very, very difficult defensive positions to break down on the outer walls here. Meanwhile, let's have a look at what these Nadu Bawi we're going to try and hit. These defensive positions look very intimidating, but to be fair, as soon as the attacking armies are close enough to the walls, it is actually fairly difficult for the defending archers to hit them. So there is that. It looks as though some mountain trolls are coming over here as well. Oh, hello. Let's see if the camera helps me here. We can see that the Heavy Goblin Infantry are going to be moving up the hill, and obviously this is an extremely steep incline. And Heavy Goblin Infantry are going to bounce off this defensive line pretty impotently, but even so, we do have our first melee engagement of the battle. The snow-covered goblins against the snow-covered black Númenóreans. Well, Corsairs actually. Corsair infantry is certainly not Númenórean. But now we can see that this is what you would kind of expect from the Orcs, bunching up, and they're going to be trying to use their sheer weight and their mass to try and do damage to Umbar, because they can't really afford to stay in this location for too long, because the longer this fight is a grind, the more this is going to favour Bobo's army, which is the one, of course, we're actually seeing the battle from the perspective of. Balagai footmen also going to come in here. Those spearmen will add their mass to the defensive line, make it even more difficult for the goblins to gain any sort of purchase. What sort of forces we've got? We've got some Mountain Uruk archers that have moved up as well. We've got heavy goblin spears, as well as, I think I saw Black Uruks the mountains. Indeed I do. So heavy goblin spears and Black Uruks are not the sort of thing to be committed lightly, and if they're moving forward, it means that Froggy is intent on causing some damage immediately. And I think Bobo realises that, because he's having to send up another unit of reserves. The Balagai footmen are going to move forward to try and shore up the line, make sure that the goblins cannot simply push their way through. And here they go. Again, getting close to fights like this, unfortunately, is not going to happen, because it will certainly crash the game. I had some trouble starting this one up as it was. It looks like, of course, their savages were moving in there as well. Meanwhile, as we look on high, that is a very intimidating sight. Orcs just smeared all over the landscape. But Pete Keep is also going to be the first one over here, and that's not surprising considering he has a plentiful amount of orc fodder. But again, Arthedain's got some civilians up there, but Arthedain have got a similar defensive position over here. I would say that this Arthedain army from Manxford is probably a little less elite, but they do have that catapult up on the cliffs over there, which is in a perfect position to get some nice hits. We'll see. It's going to be a difficult nut to crack for the orcs, but they do have a lot of units they are essentially free to throw under the bus in the name of the greater good. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look at what's going on over on this side of the battlefield. We can see arrows still flying backwards and forwards. The frame rate still struggling, shall we say. There's that catapult over there. Angmar Marauders moving forward. See if we can get in a little closer to this fight. Oof. That frame rate, though. It's hard to tell what's in there. There aren't any trolls, so it is still just made up. The Black Uruks of the Mountains still the most elite addition to this front line that the Misty Mountains forces have sent forward. There's a lot of, obviously, heavy goblin infantry, but the heavy goblin spears are going to be important too. Victory seems certain for Umbar. These Mountain Uruk archers are sort of firing that ammunition right up into the air, trying to go for possibly the Narun Aru Royal Guard, which probably not the best choice of target, to be honest with you. The Narun Aru Royal Guard are going to be able to take arrow fire like that, especially when it's that inaccurate, all day long. What's going on over here? Some orc fodder, still just hanging around. I think they're just waiting for the time being to sort of choose what they're going to send in the first wave, because make your first wave too weak and it will just not accomplish anything other than losing your own manpower. If you send in something too strong, it will definitely draw the ire of that very nicely positioned catapult. Let's have a look at what they've got in reserve. Obviously, Lango is going to send forward the second wave by the looks of things. Obviously, Froggy has committed forward a lot of his sort of lower tier fodder units already, in addition to some of his non-fodder units actually, so this is going to be interesting. Obviously, the Balagai Halberds are going to be difficult to get through in this situation because of their phalanx. Obviously, AP as well is going to work out quite nicely against the goblins. Still just arrow fire flying all over the place. Most of it missing its mark though. It would probably be worth Froggy's time to just pull the archers out at this point, or at least make them stop firing, because they're not really in the best position. There's some heavy goblin archers also firing in, but they're firing in at some of the reserve infantry forces down here. The Corsair savages in particular, terrible under archer fire, and robbing the defenders of some of their manpower at this point might be a worthwhile endeavour as this fight continues. But actually on the other side we can see that there is now movement, as we can see that the orc fodder is moving forwards, although I think the catapult's also firing. Let's have a look here. Getting a catapult's eye view of things. The catapult is indeed firing, and actually the civilians counter-charging downhill from Engsfits. The Arthedain marksmen, what are they going for? Morale on infantry? Yeah, it's not a bad target, because they've got 3 pieces of siege equipment. It might be worth trying to rout some of these non-elite units. Arthedain marksmen also going for the fire arrows into the orc fodder. Orc fodder versus civilians, a true battle of the titans going on down here. There's also fire arrows coming up from the orc archers, so the morale of all of these lower units is going to suffer pretty heavily in this meat grinder. Fire arrows being traded back and forth. Again, I can only apologise for the frame rate. There's nothing really I can do about that. Evendim spearmen as well as some civilians here on the front. They do have some backup as well, obviously Arthedain spears, Arthedain men-at-arms. So Arthedain should be able to hold for some time, but you would imagine that they're probably going to fall apart at some point or another. They've got their pikes to help hold as well, but Umbar seem to have a lot more in terms of elite units over on the other side of the defence than Arthedain do over here. But again, Umbar and Arthedain on the front, I would imagine, are probably going to lose at some point regardless, but the amount of damage they do, I think, is going to make Gondor and Arthedain's job in the later game a little bit easier. Especially considering this is a very defensible settlement. I say scenario then, I suppose that's true as well. You are looking from on high. It looks as though Umbar's starting to struggle a little bit now. Defeat seems certain, but that's fine because Bobo does have the reserves to shore up the defence. He's got some nastier units coming in. He's got some Numenorian Shield Guard. He's got some Castamir's Legion, and we also saw the Corsair Blackguards in there as well with their armor-piercing javelins. Looks as though Lango's reinforcements have started to do the job. Obviously on the front line, Corsair Savages and Corsair Infantry, not exactly the last word in terms of quality. The Belagai Halberds still holding relatively firmly, but they have started to take some casualties. The Cave Troll Drummers are on the way. They need to be careful because they could find themselves the target of the Blackguards if they get close enough. They definitely don't want to be committed to melee, because as far as trolls go, they're not exactly the best in melee, but their ability to buff your surrounding units is extremely useful to the Misty Mountains, keeping all of those low-tier goblins pointing in the right direction. That is the Black Legion of Barad-dûr, moving up with some heavy goblin halberds. Black Legion has actually taken some casualties on the approach, but I don't know, I'm not sure whether this is the right moment to use the Black Legion, because even if you do crack your way through the initial line, you're just going to find another defensive line. Might be worthwhile saving them for later. Well, obviously the Umbar archers doing some damage. We've got some snow trolls moving up from Froggy, so they are very eager to bring about the end of this initial defensive line right here and right now. And they are going to do so. That's a lot of pushing power from the Black Legion and the Heavy Goblin Spears. There's also the Trolls on the front line as well. Numenorian Shield Guard trying to plug the gap, and it might already be too late if he didn't see these units advancing up the hill. Yeah, this first defensive line is going to crumble. You can see just unit models flying all over the place from down here, from way up here. Balagar archers trying to get onto the position. They will take casualties from doing this. They do need to set up a secondary defensive line, but this is good use of their resources, because in this situation, the Orcs are going to need to do things like this in order to win, because they don't have such an overwhelming number advantages that they usually do in these scenarios, it being a 4v4. Victory is a distinct possibility for the Numenorian Shield Guard. The Snow Trolls are now getting into the Corsair Blackguards, preventing them from firing, which is good play again. They're going to have to retreat. They're going to have to, once again, get into a position they may not have the best shot. Abrazani Nadubawi, presumably they're out of ammunition and they're just trying to sort of kill off these trolls as they overextend themselves. Victory seems certain for the Corsair Savages. Numenorian Shield Guard making a big difference, it would seem. But more and more reinforcements. I think now, with reinforcements coming up the hill, the attackers should be able to make this stick. Let's head over to the other side of the battle and see what's going on. So obviously Mordor have managed to destroy the civilians. Just the application of some genuine Morannon infantry was enough to decide that fight fairly quickly. Ugh, that frame rate drop when I get too close. We'll be able to go in close at the end of the battle, I hope. Yeah, classic Arthedain phalanx here, made up of Evendim spearmen and the Arthedain pikemen, fighting in tandem. Fornos terrain defenders, obviously they still have reinforcements that they can commit. The catapult is still in a good position to fire at any oncoming reinforcements, so Mordor on this side can't really afford to blob up too much, otherwise the catapult is just going to lay waste to the forces that get sent up. So it's a bit of a conundrum here for Eclipse 2500 to try and unravel. I think Peak is also over here, yes indeed he is, with his Orc fodder. There's a lot of reinforcements that they can commit forward. This Arthedain army is basically here. They know their purpose. They just got to weaken the attackers as much as they possibly can for the kill later on, which I believe they should be able to do. So for the time being, this is a fight of 2 choke points. Indeed, this might turn out to be the case for the whole battle, as there are only 2 ways into the higher area of the settlement. Victory seems certain for Umbar at this point. Umbar have managed to salvage this situation wonderfully, and I think a lot of this comes down to the fact they didn't really have any more reinforcements on hand, the defenders that were like right there ready to be committed. Stuff like these Mountain Oak Blades needed to follow the spears and the Black Legion of Barad-dûr in. But as it was, you know, the Numenorian Shield Guard in particular seems to have been a big catalyst for why the Umbar line has essentially managed to hold its ground, although Umbar is looking a little bit more weakened than once they were. They've got some elites back here though, Abrazani, and obviously the Harbingers and the Corsair Fencers. No rest for the weary either, because as soon as they crack through that defensive line, they are going to have to deal with an Umbar line made up of Castamir's Legion and Naru Naaru Sentinels, by which point they may not be able to do a mass push anymore, and indeed you can see there's a lot of routing going on. This front line needs reinforcements, even with the Cave Troll Drummers. It's looking grim. Still some Black Uruks on the front line. Looks as though some are being sent forward now. More Black Uruks, in fact. I would say Lango probably needs to send forward more of his lower tiers and Angmar Marauders at this point, because as the attackers, they've already committed a lot of manpower and resources to try and do damage over here. So they're going to need to commit more, I think, to try and make this push worth it. They can't afford to let up. Meanwhile, over here, Catapult is now firing, so let's see what they're targeting. I can see some more Morannon infantry and some Morannon halberds are moving up the hill. A lot of arrow fire coming in from these Arthedain marksmen, obviously the perfect killing ground for them. Looks as though that catapult changed its target right at the end, because those shots dissipated into nothingness. We can also see in the background there the Olag High are moving forward. Now that would be an interesting committal. Ooh, got to be careful when you're moving artillery so close to a cliff edge, because otherwise it'll fall down. Indeed, that might already be happening. They're going to be able to salvage one artillery piece. One might be gone though. But as I was saying, they are committing forward Olag High, which might actually be the answer here. Olag High will be able to withstand arrow fire. They're not a big enough target for a catapult to reliably hit, and they will dumpster a pike line like this. There's no units of enough quality to do much damage to the Olag High at all, if they are indeed being sent forward. There's a lot of Orc Maulers being sent up as well. Obviously AP is very nice, but so far the pikes are doing a good job, and that was a perfect hit there into the centre of that army. Looks like the Olag High have not been sent forward, they were just moved a little closer to the action. Mordor trying to just sort of barge their way through, but so far the attackers not having much joy with this. This catapult is in all sorts of trouble. Oh dear. What's going on over here? Yeah, Umbar still holding on to this defensive line for dear life. Those Black Uruks not quite yet ready to commit themselves to this fight. Ooh, that is a catapult, and it is the... Where is that catapult? Am I blind? Oh, no, wait, hold on. It's the Troll catapult. It's in range. That's impressive. That's a good amount of range. Good example of how far a catapult can really hit. They need to be careful because they could very easily break their own men over here, but this is probably the nudge that Bobo needs to pull back, because if this bombardment continues, his defensive line will take a lot of losses, and he can save them pretty easily by just going around this corner and setting up a new defensive line, which honestly is no better or worse than the one he has. Well, actually, you know, he can take advantage of the hill over there, but even so. Not using their fiery ammunition, Lango, but that's probably for the best, because he'll probably break his own men if he gets friendly fire with a shot from the flaming ammo. Angmar Marauders charging up the hill there. Balagaya footmen. Yep, they're going to pull out as well. Probably just going to be one single unit left here as a rear guard. Still arrows flying all over the place. Let's go and see what's happening over on the other side. Aha! We do have trolls. We have the troll drummers that were actually sent forward. That's bold, because the troll drummers are not great in melee. There's some Arthedain men-at-arms over here as well. Black Legion of Barad-dûr coming forward en masse. The catapult, this is the catapult's opportunity. It's still usable, despite the fact that it is inevitably going to fall down the cliff at some point, thanks to the artillery bug. The troll drummers now retreating, their job done. The Olag High are on the front line as well. With the Olag High and the Black Legion there, I would assume that this is probably going to be the end of this defensive line for Lango, but in order to take full advantage of this, indeed it looks as though he and Peakkeep are going to be sending forward a constant stream of reinforcements, which is good to see, because that means they should be able to make this stick, especially with the Olag High on the front line, which are real powerhouses. They're capable of doing a lot of damage, particularly to the sort of units which Engsvitz has. You know, basic line infantry and spears. Not really capable of dishing out the kind of damage needed to do hefty damage to the Olag High. Minas Morgul Chosen also being sent forward, so a big committal of resources over here, but it should pay off here. They should be able to push through, but I would imagine the defenders are pretty heavily in front. Indeed they are. But as we've seen so often, the attackers can bring it back in the late game. They could bring it back now even if Engsvitz starts to fall apart, because obviously the you can see Castamir's Rangers being sent over here by Bobo to help out Eclipse Lango. No, not Lango, fucking Engsvitz, that's it. And this is unsurprising, because if this defensive position falls, obviously, Bobo's army can be attacked in the rear, which is, you know, his entire forces over here essentially with no escape. He has no easy way back to the town centre. He has to go through the area that Engsvitz operates to retreat. Which, with this in mind, honestly, it might be worth Lango and Froggy's time to just sort of take it easy for a little bit. You know, only commit forward what is needed to sort of keep up some form of pressure. Because you do need to sort of ration your resources at some point for the end, because obviously there's still an elite Arthedain and Gondor army that you're going to have to deal with in the higher section of the city. The catapult is clinging to life over here. See up there, there's some Arthedain marksmen that are firing. They probably don't have the best of shots, to be honest with you. Still a long way in this battle to go. Catapult, is it going to fire? It is. It's going to get a good chunk of those orcs. Victory actually seems certain for Arthedain over here. Mordor need to... this is a huge clump of Arthedain forces. They're going to try and get as close as possible to the Arthedain line so that friendly fire is more likely, but based on the position the catapult has, it's perfect. It's very unlikely that they're actually going to miss. Moran on heavy maulers being sent forward. The trolls are also still alive. There's Evendim archers, which are actually in melee. But they're about to be engaged by Minas Morgul Chosen.
They have lost half their men.
There's bad news for the orcs. I can only assume that there's a significant lull in the middle of this battle, because so many resources have been committed by the 4 attackers and the 2 initial defenders so far. Meanwhile, what is going on here? You can see orc fodder starting to spill over. The catapult is... it's going to fall, isn't it? It's going to fall at some point. Huge amount of pushing going on here. I daren't get close to that because the game will certainly crash at that point. Catapult trying to get some nice shots off. I mean, it can't miss, so there go the orcs as well. So they could be heading over to try and support the advance on the other side and attack Umbar from the rear, which would definitely be a worthwhile endeavour in my mind. Temple Execution is already being committed forward as well, so a lot of the attacking elites have already been committed, which the defenders, well, the 2 defenders which haven't really done anything up to this point will like, because their elites will be able to easily deal with a sea of fodder for a significant amount of time. Oh no! Terrible amount of friendly fire. I said it can't miss, and it went ahead and missed, and now one of the catapults is falling down the cliff. One of them's not really in the best position, the other one's not pointing the right way. Could it be that catapult's last act was to get some friendly fire on their own men? Tragic. Absolutely tragic. But to be fair, I mean, the orcs have committed forward an awful lot of their resources at this point. There's not really a lot they've got left in reserve down there. A few units only. Continuing push here from the orcs. Going to move around here. The Castamir's Rangers are fighting the Olag High. The Olag High are obviously going to win that. Let's go and see what's happening over here now. Frame rate's steadily getting better. You can see actually that some mountain trolls have been committed forward from Mordor. The troll drummers have moved up. The Angmar marauders. Defeat does seem certain. The Naru Naaru sentinels, of course, not to be taken lightly. But over here, it looks as though Umbar have been the victims of a bit of a mass push. But even so, their front line is holding resolutely as it stands. Obviously, the Naru Naaru sentinels, one of the finest pikes, probably the 2nd best pike in the game, if I had to just sort of take a guess right from the off. Obviously, the Karas Kaladhon's Guardians hold the top spot. They are multiple HP, which trumps anything that the Naru Naaru sentinels can have, even a shield value. Of course, our Blackguards, Naru Naaru Royal Guard. It might be worth at this point. Yeah, I think Bobo has started to retreat, which is Certainly for the best, I think, although he's not going to be able to escape this section of the map. He is going to be trapped because Mordor forces are starting to pour over from the position that Engsvitz's army was occupying. Corsair Blackguard's going to get into position. Obviously, those javelins are going to be pretty lethal, especially from the right target. The Troll Drummers are actually in melee at this point, which again is risky. If they die, the morale buffs disappear. But by the same token, they are also the sort of thing which can disrupt the pike formation, which at this point is certainly going to be the primary obstacle to try and overcome. Well, we can now see all throughout the lower section of the city, we can see orcs are now starting to pour over it. These civilians have been routing all over the place for some time, I think, but they've now finally been caught by the orcs. That's real unfortunate for them. The Olag High, I think, have managed to do the business against the Castamir's Rangers. Actually, no, the Castamir's Rangers escaped. Temple Executioners, so now what remains of Engsvitz's army is about to be destroyed. It's about to be enveloped. And then I would imagine they're going to do the same to Bobo's army, or at least what's left of it down here. The rest are going to try and retreat to the secondary defensive position that Engsvitz had set up. So no rest for the attackers. They're going to have to continue the assault through another difficult to break down defensive position. Here come the Olag High, leaving nothing to chance here, the attackers. I think they would be better off trying to help their allies into the settlement first and foremost. Defeat seems certain now for the Umbarim over here, but I would still suggest that they probably need a little bit more support to get through here as cost effectively as they possibly can. Again, I would love to get in close to these fights, but I don't. It will crash, and this is the sort of battle which takes such a long time to set up that I don't want to have to try and go through that again. Now, Duzgar, you can see that Umbar are sort of setting themselves up for a backs to the wall last stand over here. These orcs need to wait. I mean, if they file in one by one, these elite Umbar troops are going to eat them up. The heavy maulers. The Olag High just sort of loitering with intent. More and more reinforcements coming down here, but they're very spread out. Eclipse needs to wait. There's no archer pressure, so you don't need to charge in like this, but he is going to. Heavy Mauler's going to charge in to the Númenórean Shield Guard. In terms of unit type, you know, Axemen have got an advantage, but Númenórean Shield Guard are so good, and the Heavy Mauler's already shaken. What happens to the Olag High? Are they going to go around? Yes, they are. Some more Heavy Maulers. You can see the Orc fellas are actually now slipping through, so no assistance is actually required at this point. The outer defences have finally been felled, but at what cost? The attackers have lost more than half of their total manpower here right away. Oh, excuse me. Here we can see Castamir's Rangers getting some nice body-piercing shots on these orcs as they advance forward. So far the defenders have played this very well. They've made good use of all of their resources. Arthedain marksmen. So they're just going to kite backwards, I think. I think the problem they've got going on here, Eclipse and Peak, is that they're not really sure what they want to do. They need to keep their armies together at this point, the attackers. They need all of their forces pulling in the same direction, otherwise they're going to be in trouble. Again, we have seen, history has taught us that as the battle goes on, the attackers should start to pull it back in the late game, but with those elite armies in the back lines, I'm not so sure that that's going to be as cut and dried as it was. Those Morannon Heavy Maulers have returned from routing, but they did not make many inroads against those Númenórean Shield Guard. Umbar getting ready for their last stand. Corsair Blackguards throwing their payload into the Sauron's Will, which is not a bad target. Obviously, good damage on them. Orc fellas, they are now being enveloped down here, the Narun Aru Sentinels. And that's going to be them destroyed. Still some archer fire there, I think. Whatever happened to the Troll Catapult, I wonder? You can actually see as well on the mini-map this army over here starting to move towards the way up into the higher point of the settlement over here, and this would appear to be where most of Lango's higher tier units are. He does not want to attack now. He needs to attack when the front of the settlement is also occupied, because if he attacks now, Horton will also be able to send over support to help Brainy Smurf. mean, this is rather unsurprising. Umbar don't have really the ability to respond with much in the way of ranged firepower at this point. They've used most of that. So the orcs are going to try and use their archers to their fullest effect, and this is obviously going to encourage Umbar to come forwards and attack, which, to be fair, Umbar could very well do a lot of damage here with the kind of units they have. A lot of good elite units. Obviously the Narduzagar are very well situated to clean up all of these lower tier orcs, human swordmaster unit that they are, and the shield guard obviously very, very good as well. Still got some Iron Royal Guard, which actually may have used up all their ammunition at this point. They've got their spears out. But then we've got some Harbingers of Castamere as well. Victory is a distinct possibility for these Sentinels, are you sure? Well, there's Corsair Fencers in there as well. I mean, they're not going to go down easily, but you would imagine.
We have lost half of our men.
Only just lost half of Umbar's men? Damn, son. Meanwhile, here we have another very similar defensive position to the ones on the outside. A hill, a narrow choke point. What's going on here? We don't really have the numbers over here to start mounting any sort of assault yet. But it looks as though Pete Keith is going to send forward some dregs of his army to chase off the skirmishers. And to be fair, it looks as though the defenders won't be putting up another defence here, mainly because I don't think Bobo or Engsfitz actually have the men to hold this section. So I think what we're probably going to see is a retreat into the higher section of the city. Although these Arthedain marksmen still doing a nice amount of damage to the Troll Catapult, no less, with their fire arrows, so they could set fire to those artillery pieces. And I would definitely say the Troll Catapult's probably worth saving. That was really unfortunate. Just sort of hitting his own men there. Not really a big enough surface area to get reliable hits unless you're significantly closer. You can see that the orcs are trying to use their ranged firepower to deal with these very nasty Umbar infantry units. Which is understandable, to be fair. I mean, stuff like the Harbingers of Castamere, which haven't even been committed yet, but morale on heavy maulers breaking because of the Numenorean Shield Guard and the Narduzagar, who are now starting to feel the effects of it, to be fair, starting to lose unit counts. Might even be able to get in a little closer to this fight, actually, considering it's a little less chaotic. Heavy maulers caked in snow. A little bit more homely to them than Umbar. Some more archers trying to get round to the sidelines. They're already shaken, however. This might have been a bit too bold a play by Peak, and he's going to try and get his men out of there before the Numenorean Shield Guard go after them. There's a lot of other archers, to be fair, that are still plugging away at this unit, but Umbar really showing their resilience here. Here come the Harbingers, here come the Royal Guard, here comes another unit of Narduzagar. I think Bobo is now just sort of committing forward everything, trying to do as much damage as he can. There are around on Halberds moving forward. There's 2 units of Troll Drummers, keeping all of these units in line. Again, Umbar have really been impressive so far in this fight. All of their units this is Umbar at their finest, fighting to the death. Heavy Goblin Archers getting up onto that position. There aren't many of them left, only 33, but they're doing what they can to help soften up these units over here as they move forward. Honestly, Bobo's forces might have enough to win this over here. I mean, the Harbingers of Castamere are going to be exceptionally difficult for these Orc units over here to take down. They don't really have anything of real, genuine quality.
The enemy are badly blooded.
Except the Olagai.
They have lost half their men.
Well, the Saurons will, but they're going to need all of that. The Nazgul are somewhere. Although I'm certain that they haven't been committed as of yet. Here are the Harbingers, just doing their thing. These units getting hit from on high, those Arthedain marksmen from Engsfitz. It's been good interplay here from both Engsfitz and Bobo in these initial exchanges. Troll Drummers just doing their thing. Arrows just flying in. Moran on Halberds, of course, particularly with their backs turned, not going to do too well under this kind of arrow fire. Narduzagar pulling out, presumably they're going to try and go around. What's going on over there? Those Numenorean Shield Guard fighting the Troll Drummers. One of them actually fell. Look at these Harbingers of Castamere, though, just continuing to push forward. Sauron's Will are a little bit of a tougher target, but you would still expect the Harbingers to win that. Olak-hai moving forward, but now you can see, I would assume anyway, yeah, the Sentinels and the Fencers finally destroyed. This is going to allow what's left of Lango and Froggy's assaults to move on in. To be fair, Froggy's probably still got stuff like his Blackbacks back, because surely he's got a unit of those. The White Uruk Fearmongers could be important in the late game as well. The Misty Mountains answer to the Fountain Guard. Obviously not quite as strong, but still, it's kind of like Ghetto Fountain Guard. Defeat is almost a certainty. These Umbar units are just proving to be a real pain in the neck for these attackers. The Troll Drummers are moving forward now. Now the Troll Drummers, this will probably be the end of them, you know, because the Abrazanim Narduzagar are good units, and the Troll Drummers are not really as suited for frontline combat as their peers. Although they do have 2 units of Troll Drummers, to be fair. Froggy might still have his Cave Troll Drummers. Actually, no, he probably doesn't. I can't hear them banging their drums. Here we can see, I think, you know, the Orc numbers are starting to play into it now. The Olak-hai have moved forward, doing their thing. Where are the Harbingers? They might have already been forced back. Yeah, 32. They're now sandwiched in between Sauron's Will and Minas Morgul Chosen, which, considering the numbers discrepancy, is probably going to be sufficient to finally bring this spirited Umbar last stand to an end. Olak-hai going to get a nice rear charge here. Corsair Blackguards and Abrazanim and Narduzagar. Round on Archers getting up onto this little incline, making sure there's no way that Umbar can elongate this any longer than they already have. But good play from Bobo. He's made as good a use of his resources as was possible given the situation, I think. He was always going to eventually be overwhelmed, but his units did very well for themselves. And certainly he will have an inflated kill count to show for it at the end of this fight. As Arrowfire continues to get traded back and forth around on Archers. I say back and forth, it's just the Orcs at this point which are doing the damage, surely. Although a lot of friendly fire, those Narduzagar getting in, essentially making it so those Numenorean Shadow Guard, of all things, getting body-piercing friendly fire onto their allies. There's a lot of friendly fire going on here at this point. At this point the Orcs would definitely be best off trying to conserve as much ammunition as they can.
Our foolish general has thrown his life away.
There goes the general. Golden armour doesn't really go well in the snow anyway. Froggy's force is also moving forward. The amount of red on this radar starting to overwhelm the green. Having a look at this though, you can see that the attackers are still more than 20% behind, but again, we shall see how that changes as the game goes along. Traditionally the attackers always bring it back in the late game, which they will need to. But has the damage that Umbar and the initial Arthedain army done here at the start, is it going to be too much to reconcile with, I wonder? What's that up there? Arthedain marksman. Nice position they've taken up. Right up on the peak of the mountains there. Olak-hai moving in. Still, Umbar will not go quietly into that good night. Although I can't really find them anymore, so I would imagine that's going to be just about it. And I think the only thing Umbar have left to contribute to this battle is going to be the Castamere's Rangers that they saved, which, to be fair, if you were going to save something, that would be a good thing to save, particularly seeing as this map is not going to get any less choke pointy as time goes on. So just seeing, you can see those Arthedain Mars are probably going to retreat back into there. And what's going on over here? There's something over here. It's Dunedain Rangers. Now that's bold. I mean, they could reveal themselves, but I kind of doubt it. I think what they're going to do is just keep them hidden until the entirety of the attackers are trying to go on the bridge, and then they will move over here and try and shoot them from behind. At least that's the only reason I can see why you would leave such a potentially damaging unit behind. I can't imagine you would just reveal them immediately, because then the attackers will immediately charge forward and try and kill it as quickly as possible. Yeah. So I think we'll probably make a cut here, because it's going to take the attackers some time to get their ducks in a row and move. Wait a minute. What do we have here? We have some Special Forces civilians who are moving through the houses. It doesn't really matter what the civilians engage at this point, they're going to get destroyed. They might be able to kill off some units of like really mangled archers. But even then, I sort of doubt it. We have a catapult actually for the Witch Realm of Angmar, which I might have missed. We have a troll catapult and a regular catapult. Attacking artillery is going to be very important in this situation, I think. Getting some nice hits on those defending elites. Regardless, I think I will actually make a cut here, because I don't think these civilians are going to be up to much, but if they do, then I will cut back in briefly to sort of show what they accomplish. Well, they did manage to catch this unit of Angmar Marauders off guard momentarily, but based on the fact that there are other units in sort of close proximity, I can't imagine this is going to go all that well. I mean, maybe. I mean, Angmar Marauders aren't exactly the finest unit in the world, so these civilians might yet play a role, although I thought those Angmar Marauders were routing for a second then. That would have been extremely embarrassing for them. The Witch King would not have accepted such failure. Look at the corpses over here though, so many of them. Civilians' victory is a distinct possibility, so they may very well actually win this fight over here. Absolute madness. We are at more or less the halfway point of this battle now, so this is a pretty good place to sort of take stock of what's going on. Again, as I previously mentioned, the attackers are some way behind in terms of the percentages, but we shall see. Traditionally the attackers bring it back, so it's very possible that they will do so once again. Marauders. Yeah, defeat is a distinct possibility, although to be fair, the civilians, morale, not great. Just men and women wielding shovels and pitchforks. So, yeah. The orcs might have what it takes to simply rout them off. And indeed, the civilians are dying pretty quickly, and the marauders, while it says defeat is a distinct possibility, they haven't actually taken any losses as yet. They're shaken and very tired, the civilians. Fighting to defend their home, but I don't think this is going to work out in their favour. And indeed, now defeat is almost a certainty. It has flipped the other way. They managed to kill one Angmar Marauder. Well, maybe a few more, because there was a very depleted unit on the front, which is... I mean, the Marauders are wavering and shaken as well. The ultimate wet noodle fight going on. Sort of low wall, they're actually hitting each other over the wall. Balance of forces is evenly matched. I don't think the civilians are going to get out of this alive, but hey, they will have done something at least. They will have killed some marauders, which is better than simply dying. And I suppose there really was no escape for them if they were sort of marooned down here. They could have maybe tried to hide within one of the buildings and then attack from the rear towards the end of the fight, but you know, in the end, the attackers probably would have noticed them regardless. Yes, indeed. Victory is a certainty, are you sure? Not sure the game knows what it's talking about here. The civilians are taking losses continuously. And the Marauders aren't. They are shaken, I suppose, but now the civilians are wavering. There's only so much I can comment on a fight like this, but it is at least something that's happening on the battlefield in the downtime. This is sort of like the intermission at the halfway point. That was a routing flag, wasn't it? The civilians are only shaken now, and the Angmar Marauders are... Well, they were wavering, now they're shaken. Now the civilians are wavering. There was a routing flag. The depleted Angmar Marauders are running away. What even is this fight that's going on? Insane. think the Angmar Marauders will probably be fine at this point. They're only shaken, their foes are wavering and losing unit models fairly consistently. And there they go. They rout. And the Angmar Marauders will move forward. So now I will resume the cut, as it were, because there's still going to be a little bit of time before the attackers are going to be in any fit state to begin their final assault on the upper part of the town. This is somewhat confusing. These Maulers are wavering, but the Dunedain Rangers actually revealed themselves. Maybe they lost their nerve and decided to retreat back over the bridge. But Engsfitz has got some Arthedain marksmen over here, which on their own are not likely to accomplish much. They could be, you know, very, very useful sort of additional units on a line if he were to retreat them. Not sure what's going to happen here, but again, I will resume. Those Maulers are routing from nothing. Yeah, the Arthedain marksmen at this point are going to fall back, so I'll resume the cut, but just worth checking in to say that the Dunedain Rangers have left their sort of outer ambush position. Well, I suspect this is going to be somewhat disconcerting for the defenders, because the Troll Catapult has set up a very nice position indeed, and it is going to start going for Heath Horton's phalanx formation, landing a few half-decent hits. I don't know how much ammunition the Troll Catapult actually has left, but any additional damage it can do, particularly on a unit like the Annuminous Gate Guards, will definitely be much appreciated, I'm sure, by the attackers. Another decent hit there, only on Arthedain Men-at-Arms, but again, just robbing the defenders of some of their manpower could well be... Oh, that was a perfect hit as well. This catapult could be trying to do some counter-fire at this point, which is fine. I mean, if I were the attackers, I would keep going for the infantry, honestly, because as soon as the catapults are gone, at least the Troll Catapults, while they are similar to the Troll Drummers and they're not great in melee, they are still a presence in melee, whereas a regular catapult crew is obviously, you know, really not very good at all. Are they going to be returning fire with fire ammunition? Yes. Oof, that was a close shot, but it is worth saying that the catapult is much more accurate when you use regular ammunition. So if you're going to sort of artillery to artillery, you want to turn off fire ammo so that it lands more direct hits, as the flaming boulders are exchanged back and forth. Again, near misses. These Arthedain marksmen from Engsfitz being engaged by sort of the drips and drabs of some of the depleted units, which we saw earlier. Oh, that's unfortunate. Those Annuminous Gate Guards, by the skin of their teeth, avoiding a direct hit. Now Horton is indeed using standard shot, and unfortunately still didn't hit, which is unfortunate for him. Continuing to go on here. Let's go and have a look at what's going on over here. It looks as though you have Brainy Smurf's Gondor Archers and Veterans of Osgiliath ready. Ramus Ekor Garrison also sort of going to be sent forward as the first line. Fornoster Rain Knights as well as Arthedain Men-at-Arms. What's going on here? We've got some Witchround Blackguard. I mean, these initial lines of infantry, honestly, should probably be fairly easy pickings for Lango's elite forces, but the problem is going to be well, these units here. The Veterans of Osgiliath and the Gondor Archers have essentially got free reign at shooting at whatever they please. And the Gundabad Guard and the Guardians of Kharndoom taking damage. I mean, a lot of these Gundabad units, to be fair, Gundabad Angmar units, I should say, are very well armoured and shielded. But continued arrow fire is still going to have a good effect. I can feel my voice starting to go. My word. Well, these Arthedain marksmen, this is a bit of a... This might be a bit too bold and brave. You know, they were doing well when they were holding their little initial line, designed to just sort of slow the enemy down. Now they've counter-attacked, however. I think they saw perhaps an opportunity to kill off some targets, although it's only Moran on infantry that's really here. Not really mission critical to kill them off. There are a dime a dozen in Orc armies, or Mordor armies I should say. All of these Orcs. There's still heavy goblin crossbows. Crossbows in the late game could prove to be devastating if the defenders don't have any range, if they don't have any infantry that can go after them. I can only assume that Horton's been tremendously unlucky here, because the Troll Catapult is still... Both of them are still intact. They lost one earlier at some point. Then again, he has been fortunate in other ways as well, that the attacking catapults have not really landed any telling hits on the Annuminous Gate Guards, which is surely their target. Meanwhile, yeah, these Arthedain marksmen finally routing. Their boldness got the better of them, and now they are retreating, running for their lives. But this of course means that it's probably going to devolve into a little bit more of a skirmish over here. These Arthedain marksmen fighting to the death, so they will be destroyed utterly by the orcs over on this section of the city. This troll catapult's still alive fully. Looks like there's a bit of Napoleonic warfare going on over here. Skirmisher to skirmisher, Numenorian Shadow Guard and heavy goblin archers going against Arthedain marksmen. I think that's a big mistake, I think, from Eclipse 2500. You don't want to be sending in your Numenorian Shadow Guard into a skirmish fight with Arthedain marksmen and Kerandros marksmen units which are designed to take arrow fire, because of course Numenorian Shadow Guard are rangers, don't do particularly well under arrow fire, and their projectiles are too valuable to use in a situation like this. The Temple Guard as well. Huge waste, this. Huge waste. The Temple Guard have got armor-piercing missiles, which situationally are even better. Finally, Horton gets a direct hit. Glad I turned around at that exact moment. Yeah, that's terrible. Eclipse wasting his ammunition on just basic units of archers, which are already fairly damaged. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Meanwhile, initial engagements over here. We have a lot of Arthedain men-at-arms with the armour upgrades, backed up by some Ramos Equor garrison. And that's pretty much it. And some dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights, which explains why they're having some success, although the Guardians of Khan Doom are over here. Now the Trolls are coming forward, the Trolls of Angmar. And this, I think, expeditionary force which Arthedain and Gondor have sent down will ultimately be destroyed by the elite units from Angmar. The Trolls in particular are going to be able to do nice damage, even if the Fornoster Rain Knights should be able to give it back in kind. As long as the Trolls is properly supported, which based on how Lango's units are all in close proximity, they should be. Interestingly enough, it looks as though, rather than holding the upper sections, Gondor is going to continue to send units down here, which is interesting. I don't think Angmar have actually got any archers down here to take full advantage of this play by the defenders, which is perhaps why he's decided to do it in the first place. Gundabad Guard moving in. Well, well, well. Right, let's go and see if Eclipse has decided to abandon his insanity, and it looks like it, because he's going to be moving his archers. Well, you can see there is some Arthedain marksmen again from Engsvitz. They returned from routing, gathered their courage to slow down the attackers once more, as the orcs continue to just try and move forwards on this snowy winter's day. More arrows, Moran on archers, shooting into the front there, trying to do as much damage as they can to that imposing looking Arthedain phalanx. Although that catapult is going to be a real concern for the attackers. I don't really know. I'd still give the advantage to the defenders. I mean, the attackers do have reserves, but so many of these units are looking a little bit bruised and battered. You know, that initial assault really did take it out of them, and I think with the quality that Arthedain and Gondor both possess here in the late game, they should be able to pull this out. The gap has closed a little bit, but not substantially. The attackers need to start making more genuine inroads. Those are Numenor Gate Guards starting to take some more substantial damage, because they're actually poking out in front of the Spearman, which means the initial line of them is free to attack without the benefit of having a shield bonus. Kerandros marksmen moving forward. It looks as though some Fornoster Rain Knights are going forward as well. Kerandros marksmen, of course, are kind of hybrid units in the sense that they make pretty decent two-handed swordsmen in melee. Obviously not quite to the same level as the Kerandros Swordmasters, but still, it's definitely a unit that isn't to be trifled with. Now dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights. I'm not sure how the attackers are going to handle this, but they need to send forward some heavy hitters to try and deal with this counter-attack that Arthedain and Gondor seem to be engaging in. There's arrows still flying into the defensive line, and the Numenor Gate Guards have taken a little bit more in terms of casualties. The Troll Catapult is now right up in the face of this front line. They got sick of missing, I suppose. They're still missing. Trolls aren't exactly the sharpest knives in the drawer, I suppose, as these arrows continue to just flow into this defensive line. It's be fair, Karandros Marksman dismounted Fornoster Rain Knight's doing a good job, but eventually Minas Morgul Bodyguard is a unit of more genuine quality, which should help all of these basic units push their way through. Some depleted Sauron's Will as well. Let's go and see what's happening real quick over on this front line. And indeed, the Trolls of Gundabad are over here, so the Trolls may actually all be dead at this point. Or the Trolls of Angmar at least, which doesn't surprise me too much, but honestly, this fight looks like it's going to go in favour of the defenders. They've got Wardens of the White Tower on the front line now. You can see, or are those Veterans of Osgiliath? Nope, those are the Veterans of Osgiliath with their armour upgrade. Similar shields, you know. But now we've got some Guards of Osgiliath moving forward as well. Yeah, I'm not sure Angmar have got the numbers to actually do much over here. Their units are very elite, and they'll be able to do damage, but ultimately I don't think they have the numbers to genuinely harm these. I mean, look at how many units Gondor have got in reserve, and a lot of it is basic. Gondor infantry, Gondor spears, Guards of Osgiliath are good, but nothing extremely special like the Nairu Naaru Sentinels. Castamir's Rangers from Bobo, moving forward to try and get some good shots. Body piercing at this point could be just the sort of thing to finish the attackers off. The Witch Realm Pikemen, the Guardians of Khan'dûn, Blackwatch Legion and Witch Realm Blackguard waiting in the background, but I'm not sure. There is a unit over here somewhere as well, hidden behind this hill. It's the Witch Realm Hammer Guard. Unsurprising that they're trying to keep out of sight of the archers. There's a trebuchet still up on the hill, but how useful that's actually going to be as the battle goes along is debatable. Balance of forces is evenly matched. It might be a good idea at this point for Angmar to send reinforcements forward, which they are doing, Guardians of Khan'dûn, but I think the best Angmar can hope for is just to try and occupy all of these forces for as long as possible. The thing is, I'm not sure that this army over here has got what it takes to just outright win this fight. A nice point-blank shot there. Could have got some friendly fire. It's somewhat hard to tell, but the sort of counter-attack that they sent out has failed, although Horton sending out another unit to counter-attack, these Arthedain men-at-arms. This sort of wave-based approach is probably not the best idea, particularly not when you're sending out individual units like this, because they are going to get individually overwhelmed, whereas if you present a united front, that's much less likely to happen. Arthedain Pikeman, Enkspitz managed to save some more of his units, it seems. So another unit of Arthedain Pikemen probably going to come out to try and support these Arthedain men-at-arms. But, that debuff from the rotten meat is certainly not going to help. You'd think that rotten meat would actually spur the orcs on, but unfortunately not. Arthedain Marksman shooting into the side of this attack as I fall into the trench. I don't think the attackers have got what it takes in terms of just sheer numbers, because they're going to, you know, they need more in terms of manpower if they're going to crack this defence, and I don't think they have that. Dismounted Knights of Numinas are waiting in reserve as well. Wardens of the North. Dunedain Rangers, which, you know, Dunedain Rangers, if they were to, for example, get up onto this hill over here and start shooting into the side of the Orc army, which is already what this very depleted unit of Arthedain Marksmen is doing, it could get real ugly for the attackers. Meanwhile, yeah, you can see that the attackers, I think, they're emboldened at this point. They smell blood in the water, and they're counter-attacking on all fronts. Gondor is just starting to push down off the settlement and into what remains of Lango's forces. Blackwatch Legion victory is a distinct possibility. I can't imagine that's going to last too long. Castamir's Rangers, you can see that at this point, Angmar, it's going to be all hands on deck. They just need to commit everything forward and hope for the best, really, and I don't think the best is going to be forthcoming. Guards of Osgiliath, Axemen of Lasarnak, Laxmen, I was about to say. Condor Spearmen, the balance of forces is evenly matched. As the numbers start to take more and more of effect, I mean, units like Karandros Swordmasters are on hand as well. Bobo's Castamir's Rangers, which were initially going to try and get some nice side shots into the Witch Realm Blackguard, have unfortunately been intercepted by the Guardians of Khan'dûn, but nonetheless, at the well, actually the Guardians of Khan'dûn are running from this position, which is just going to allow Bobo to inflate his kill count even more. I'd be extremely surprised if by the end of this fight we didn't see Umbar has the most kills. What's going on over here? Arthedain Marksmen repositioning themselves. They deployed their stakes up there on the hill, just in case cavalry charged up the cliffs. Yeah, I mean, at this point, may very well be worth the defender's time just charging forward and trying to wipe the attackers from the field. Victory is a distinct possibility over here, a certainty even. Numinous Gate Guards. Arthedain Pikemen, yeah, with this layered defence, Arthedain are going to be in a pretty good spot. They're actually feeling confident enough to actually take resources off of this defensive point and possibly send them elsewhere, although I don't really know where. Trebuchet. The Trebuchet really hasn't done anything in this map, it hasn't really had the chance to. And here the Gondorian counter-attack continues. To be fair, it's going to be difficult to sort of scour these units from the field quickly. I mean, Witch Realm Pikemen backed up by Witch Realm Blackguard, Guardians of Khan'du. And then as we look over here, we can see Castamir's Rangers shooting point blank into Witch Realm Hammerguard. Hammerguard not exactly the easiest unit to kill in melee. Pelagia Marines, but things are all over the place over here. Any more reinforcements coming down here? I mean, this could be the break the attackers were hoping for, potentially. If they can mop up the Castamir's Rangers and the Pelagia Marines as quickly as they can, they could try and attack from the side with their Hammer Guard and start to do some real damage to a lot of these basic Gondorian units, but I'm personally not so sure. I think the defenders should be fine regardless. I think they have enough manpower. I mean, up here you can see that I haven't seen the Gondorians have to commit any of their elites yet. You can see that, you know, there's like a just-in-case plan back here up on this little hillock. There's all the Gondorians waiting in reserve. Gondor Spearman. There's a Trebuchet. Dunedain Rangers. Meanwhile, Arthedain's starting to waver a little bit on this front line. There's arrows flying all over the place. White Uruk Fearmongers were committed forward. There's another catapult in the background there from Angmar, which, you know, artillery is capable of turning a battle around, potentially. But I think the layered defence here is really helping Arthedain because it's making it very difficult for the catapult to attack a blob. And obviously the Orcs have to blob up, which is leading to the Wardens of the North and the Dunedain Rangers inflicting terrible casualties on the defenders. There was fighting sounds then. Apparently the catapult is fighting, but I don't know what it's fighting against. Looks like they're out of ammunition though and are just going to be sent forward. What's the percentages looking like? Well, to be fair, the attackers are slowly pulling it back. Slowly and surely. That was a nice hit on the Arthedain Pikemen, but I'm not really sure that they're pulling it back anywhere near quickly enough. Well, that was very fortuitous. Eagle-eyed Angmar catapult there, taking out the Arthedain general. Again, shouldn't affect Arthedain too badly. I mean, maybe on the front line. But with a unit like the Numinous Gate Guards here, you would imagine that they're just going to sort of hold themselves relatively easily. And the White Uruk Fearmongers have definitely been the target of the Wardens of the North and the Dunedain Rangers because they've taken horrendous casualties. There's Minas Morgul Chosen, there's Black Legion, but all of these units are looking very, very haggard. There are Blackbacks back there in perfect health, and Temple Guard. Nice hit there on the Dunedain Peacekeepers. The attackers aren't spent just yet. I'm not surprised. I mean, is Bobo's army even intact at this point? Do we even see any Castamir's Rangers left alive? Amusingly enough, Gondor have sort of ceased their attack. They've set up a phalanx over here, and yeah, Angmar have been able to turn this around. I was thinking that Gondor were going to send their entire army down here and wipe Angmar from the field, but as it is, they didn't. And the forces they sent down here were not quite enough to destroy all of these elite Angmar forces. And now, without the benefit of, well, I say that, more Gondor infantry coming down to reinforce. Some Gondor archers as well, perhaps out of ammunition, we shall see. But Lango, hanging on in there in this fight. He's still doing his best.
Praise to our Lord. Our men have slain the enemy general. Now his men will lose heart.
Well, someone's general died. Is that Engsvitz's? I can only imagine it is. He didn't lose his general earlier, so his general must be in that mess somewhere. The Anuminas Gate Guards doing their best to hold down the fort from the front. We saw how well the Naru and Aru Sentinels did earlier, despite having a really rough engagement. But there are trolls here on the front line. It's only a troll catapult, but even so, that could still prove to be a bit of a problem. More Fornos Terrain Knights coming forward to try and shore up the line. The attackers, now it's kind of all or nothing. A sort of grazing hit there on the attackers as they move forward. Another nice hit. That catapult could prove to turn things around. Sauron's Will, which were actually in good condition, no longer, because the Dunedain Rangers saw them and decided that they should no longer be alive. Troll Drummers. Oh, they've still got Temple Executioners way back there. I mean, the percentages aren't moving, that's the problem. What's this over here? Nice hits there on the Arthedain Marksman. Maybe not the most prime target they could have gone after, but still, good kills nonetheless. I still think the defenders are going to be okay. We are now, however, just into the final 10,000 frames. The final phases of this battle are now underway. Dismounted Knights of Anuminas are on the front line backing up the Anuminas Gate Guards, so really only the finest of Orc units are going to be enough to crack this line. They do have the Blackback Berserkers and the Temple Executioners, but they don't really have much else beyond that, and I fear that the manpower of the attackers is simply going to run out. What have we here? These Karandros Swordmasters still holding back Lango's army. But again, I mean, as soon as the Hammer Guard come forward, look at the layers they have to go through. Gondor Infantry, Citadel Guard as well. Citadel Guard with their additional AP are going to be even more of a deadly proposition to go through. Yeah, I think the best Lango can hope for is to keep Brainy Smurf's units down here, perhaps. Some routing Arthedain Pikemen. There's that Trebuchet, which is sort of loitering within 10. What's going on here? There's a single Morannon infantryman who is routing, but he has somehow found his way through the defensive line, but, you know, he's not really in the best place to be all alone. Black Legion of Barad-dûr, obviously the Anuminas Gate Guards. They've taken casualties both from the archers and from being in melee with trolls, but as it stands, they are holding firm, the real anchor to this line. Dunedain Rangers technically being hit while they were hidden. The catapult within the snowy trees. Wards of the North, of course, very capable in melee as well as a single unit goes. Let's actually go backwards a little bit and see what they have in reserve left. So they've got some Hawk Fellas, they've got some Angmar Halberds in good condition, you know, over 200 per unit. Scourge Raiders, the Temple Executioners, and the Nazgul. The Nazgul could be an interesting one. We have seen in the past that the problem with the Nazgul has been when they get overwhelmed without support, so if they're going to send forward the Nazgul, they should probably do it quickly, so they actually have other units that they can rely on. The Blackback Berserkers and the Goblin King Bodyguard are already in there, but they don't really have much in the way of support. The attackers need to send up more. The Nazgul and the Temple Executioners together are a very deadly proposition, but at this point I just don't think the attackers have got the numbers, which is odd considering they're orcs. And slowly but surely these Witch-Round Pikemen are dealing with this sort of initial defense that was put up, or like the remnants of the counter-attack, shall we say. But then they're just going to have to go through Guards of Osgiliath, backed up by a lot of Gondor infantry and Gondor archers that are out of ammo. Just the long road of Gondorian blockades. Yeah, there's really, this fight over here is not really going to advance too far. It's really going to be this one, which is where the attackers' final hopes really lie. Some Dunedain Rangers now being sent forward, committed to melee. We can now see that this is probably going to be the final hurrah for the attackers. The Dunedain Rangers coming in. I think the attackers should maybe have been a little bit quicker on the uptake with regards to reinforcing their attacks. Even if they thought the attack wasn't going too well, once you've committed a certain amount of men to it, you need to keep it going. Otherwise, you've wasted too many men, essentially doing nothing.
Our enemy has lost his stomach to fight. We must push our advantage.
That is a full rout from someone's army, or at least someone's army is nice point-blank hit there on the Arthedain front line. Someone's army is gone. Possibly. It's not Froggy's, it's not Lango's, and it's not Eclipse, so it must be Peak. And again, he had the lowest tier army, so it's not too surprising that he is the first attacking army to give up the Ghost. Wardens of the North slipping their way through. Charging into battle there. And at this point, a mass counter-attack could be on the cards. Which, you know, it could be a little bit dangerous with all of these Marauders. But the fact that Temple Executioners and the Nazgul, they've been saved too long. They've been wrapped up in too much cotton wool. Initially, the Temple Executioners were committed quite early, but they needed to be committed earlier. Much, much earlier, if the attackers were to have any chance on this front line. Froggy's still doing his best with his crossbows. They've still got the Oleg Eye. They too have been in melee, however, so a little bit more damage than they would otherwise have been. Just coming out from behind the rocks there, we can see the dismounted Knights of Enuminas. Oleg Eye potentially going to do some good damage. The ones in the north, though, will give it back as good as the trolls can give it. Meanwhile, this Gondorian force has decided to push forwards. Well, actually it hasn't. The orcs have just pushed into them. But this is really Lango's last attempt to do something over here. He really doesn't have any other choice than to just try and commit everything and kill as many Gondorians as he's able, but it's going to be difficult. I mean, particularly if Brainy Smurf decides to bring all of these forces down here and just blob up on them, because then the orcs simply won't have the numbers to deal with that. Elite Angmar units, though, are certainly not to be taken lightly. But neither are elite defensive units, and I would imagine that things are starting to dismounted Knights moving as well. Only 24 of them. They will be overwhelmed if they're not careful, but the Oleg Eye actually retreated out of this fight after the Wardens of the North started to make their presence felt. Defeat is a distinct possibility. Victory is a distinct possibility. Where are those Temple Executioners and Nazgul, man? At this point, you may as well commit everything forwards. This has been a long and protracted fight, but it's one that I think the defenders have always had the better of. From the initial engagements, I think the way that Bobo set out his defence, I think they were in a good place. What's going on over here? Defeat seems certain for these Gondorians, which is unsurprising, but still, more casualties are going to be inflicted on these Angmar troops, and of course, Gondor has not yet used any of their elites. They've still got all of these units in reserve, so the outcome of this battle is basically confirmed at this point. What's going on up on that hill? Still some Arthedain marksmen. Some more Arthedain marksmen getting into a nice position to fire. This settlement is also very nicely defensible. I mean, there's a lot of choke points that you can use to your advantage. There's a lot of positions that if you're the defenders in particular, you can take up with your archers and just rain hell down on the enemy. It's a very large settlement as well, but it manages to not be too open and therefore go massively in favour of the attackers, which if there's a lot of open space for them to take advantage of, the attacking orcs will often do that. This is interesting. What's going on here? There's some nice hits from the Angmar catapult there regardless, but it looks as though Angmar are actually falling back. There's a lot of routing going on. For what purpose, I wonder? Well, the Temple Guard are coming forward now. Angmar Marauders are the Wardens of the North still up here. Dismounted Knights of Enuminas taking some more damage. Wardens of the North are still up here, right in the thick of things, in a sea of Angmar Marauders. And now some Angmar Halberds are coming forward to sort of seal their demise. Heavy Goblin crossbowmen trying to do their best to shoot. I've lost complete track of the Nazgul, which means they could, at this point, be anywhere. Well, there are the Temple Executioners. I imagine the Nazgul are with them. Yes, they are. So it's now or never, really, with the defenders showing a little bit of weakness there by actually pulling out of this fight. The attackers could try and take advantage of that. I still don't think they've got enough to actually win this fight at all. But nonetheless. So we won't actually get to see this sort of top area with the streets and the castle and the little hill over there in too much action, you would think, and even if you did, it would be sort of the final dregs of the attackers. Let's see what's happening down here. Yeah, it's been a real slow grind for Lango down here. He's been doing his best, but ultimately there's just so many Gondorians, and now you can see there's another unit of Gondorian spearmen coming down here just to hold them in place for that much longer. And there's also some reinforcements which are actually going back up, so some Axemen of Lasarnak and some Fountain Guard. I mean, Lango should win this initial engagement, but again, eventually he's just going to run out of steam. Reinforcements, perhaps? There's not much time left in this fight at this point. Dunedain Rangers. Still alive. Don't know if they've still got ammunition. Engsvitzers certainly haven't. Engsvitzers are probably dead, actually, based on the fact they were committed to melee. These Anuman Escape Guards are still alive. Only 40 of them left, but still. Those were Olakai trying to charge in and out of battle with presumably whatever is left of the frontal forces here. There's only one Warden of the North, and he just died. But Arthedain's still fighting hard. Another player has admitted defeat. Who might that be? Possibly... well, it's not Froggy or Eclipse. And I doubt it's Lango. Indeed it isn't. So it must be one of the defenders that has been long dead, so it'd be either Engsvitz or Bobo. And probably Engsvitz, based on the fact that I am actually viewing this replay through the eyes of Bobo's replay. Catapult doing its best to hit probably the dismounted Knights of Anuminas. But there's still arrows flying all the way into the late game. These Arthedain marksmen using their fire arrows, trying to do some nasty morale damage to this front line. Nice damage there. Catapult, the hit falling just short. Arrow fire just coming in from all sides at this point. Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen would probably be a good target, just because at this point there's really no other targets that would go down quickly. I mean, I suppose you could go after the Nazgul or the Olakai, but the Nazgul, Temple Executioners and Olakai have been used very conservatively at this point, and you may as well commit them forwards at this point. Chances of you actually winning the fight are slim anyway, but your men on the front line don't really stand a chance without the support of those units. I'll look down here. Looks as though all that Gondor have been prepared to commit forward down here has been committed. Gondor will certainly have the army at the end of this battle that's in the best condition. There's some routing going on, interestingly enough. So with 3,000 frames left to go, though, you would imagine. Yeah, I mean, the defenders pulled ahead. Good performance from the defenders this. I imagine people will be quite pleased that the attackers have lost the scenario. What is this? The Olakai circumventing the lines, going after the Dunedain Rangers. Not before the Dunedain Rangers get off one more shot into the blob. More kills. Here come the Nazgul and the Temple Executioners, a little bit too late in my opinion. There's still some Angmar Marauders sort of in the back. What are these guys doing? They're just they're going crazy. They just wanted to see what the upper settlement actually looked like before they were killed, I suppose. Here comes some Gondorian reinforcements as well. Some Dunedain Troll Slayers moving down from the hill over there. So yeah, the argument could be made that maybe the defenders had too many elite forces, considering it was an even army game. I would say that in particular the Umbar force in the initial sort of defence had a lot of elite units, which the defenders had to, the attackers I should say, had to commit a whole bunch to trying to destroy. And that's not Bobo, that's not saying anything against Bobo. I mean, he used the resources he had to their full effect. But I would say that if they're going to make any changes to this scenario in the future, they should probably tone down Umbar's initial army a little bit, just so that, you know, the focus would be on Umbar and the initial Arthedain army, trying to soften the attackers up, but the attackers would still have a good amount of forces left to actually attack this upper position, because the Gondor and the Arthedain armies up here were full of just really deadly units, and the attackers really only had like battered units to try and take them on with, which was never really going to yield much in the way of results. This is just one big old blob at this point. The Temple Execution is going to do their best. The Nazgul are in there as well, I think. Or they could be elsewhere. Axemen of the Sarnak are fighting. No, the Nazgul are up here. and they're on their own, so they will certainly be overwhelmed. Axemen of Lasarnak going to fight them. Dunedain Troll Slayers celebrating after slaying the trolls. They killed the Olag High. So good for them. Dunedain Troll Slayer is obviously very, very good. AP and melee as well. A tool that Arthedain often desperately needs. Meanwhile, down here, Angmar are actually going to win down here. The resources which Gondor essentially took away from this area mean that Angmar would be victorious, but I don't think it's going to matter too much because ultimately their allies are going to be long dead by the time they get up there. Still 10 Nazgul remaining, doing their best to cut their way through the Axemen. Arthedain Marksmen. Arthedain Marksmen have been a big part of this victory. We've seen them seemingly everywhere, doing tons and tons of damage. Temple Executioners, interestingly enough, they have actually won this outer engagement as well. That's mainly because of reorganisation that the defenders have been doing. And at this point, you know, with all of the forces they have left in reserve, hear the Gondorian horn. Victory is at hand, as we are.
The enemy flees the battle. Run down those worthless peasants.
I'd imagine that would probably be Froggy. I think Lango and Eclipse are the only ones left. But yeah, we are now into the final 1,000 frames. I think we should be. Yes, well within the final 1,000 frames. And yeah, good play from the defenders all around. I think that maybe it was a little bit easier for them based on, you know, the armies that they had in relation to the attackers this time around. But you know, if they wanted to make this scenario a little closer, I would say toning down the Umbar army would be exactly the sort of thing which would make this scenario dead on. So it's going to be, you know, within 20% at the very least. And I like seeing this map again. I can't remember what this map is called, but it's been around for quite some time at this point, and it's a good map. It's got a lot going for it. Dunedain Rangers presumably going to be committed to melee. These Axemen have stood before the Nazgul and they've killed one of them, so that presumably means the Horton had 2 units of Wardens of the North. Yeah, I think maybe one of the armies does need to be toned down a little bit in order to make this scenario, even if it's the intention that the defenders win. You know, you don't. I think this has also proven that some of these units are a bit, you know, unneeded. Like the Trebuchet hasn't done anything this whole match. You can probably cut that. You know, you don't need 2 units of Wardens of the North. One of them is only just coming out now. Gondor don't need to have so many elites because, again, they weren't really used. They're sort of being moved forward now, but that's only to sort of pick away at the distended remains of Angmar, and presumably maybe this was Bobo leaving the lobby, but it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, we can probably assume that Umbar were the ones that got the most kills in this fight, and you know, overall the defenders did a very good job, but you know, for the reasons I said, maybe a little bit of tweaking needs to be done if that is indeed the intent. So yeah, good scenario that. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which again, you know, according to the schedule, we'll be doing a sort of smaller scale battle followed by a larger scale battle, sort of alternating. So again, I think it might be a 2v2 depending on what I find within my kind of extensive backlog at this point. I'm trying to get all of these replays done before the next patch looks like it's about to drop, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.